What's up, guys? Welcome to Powerline Podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Lucas. All right, for the longtime listeners out there, I appreciate you tuning in each and every week. Love you guys. For the new listeners just joining, I see you guys. I appreciate you. I hope you guys get some value out of these episodes. I'm telling you, there's tons of value in this episode. It's with Redgie Probst, the Chief Operating Officer of Quanta Services. It's not every day you get to sit down with somebody that is the Chief Operating Officer of a $20 billion utility company. They're really a solutions provider. It was a great conversation. I know you're gonna get a ton of value out of this one. So let's jump right in. All right, Reggie, welcome to Powerline Podcast. This is largely responsible, like you're largely responsible for making this happen. Truly grateful for the opportunity to even have this exposure, this experience, and be able to build a studio like this. But just wanted to welcome you personally to the show and say thanks for coming down, talking.
Thank you. I think it's awesome what we're doing. And I remember sitting, I don't even know where I was, but I was on Instagram and run across your Instagram page or whatever it is. And I was like, holy cow, this is cool. And I mean, I know you were working for Quanta at the time,
yeah,
but this was kind of separate. And there was this one in another podcast called The Show Up Dad. Mm-hmm. And when I started watching it, following it, I was just like, holy cow, all linemen, all craftsmen and tradesmen should follow this, because it's not about the lineman. It's about how do you be a better person, and how do you be a better dad? How do you be a better husband? I'm like, this is what our young people need to hear, young and old, and I've learned a lot just listening, and I think you have some great content and great ideas, so
cool.
Thanks.
I remember getting that DM, like, hey, Ryan, I'm Redgie Probst. I'm like, hey, Reggie, I know who you are. I see, I've been following you for a while. Like, I know, I've been seeing you following, because you can see everything back end, right? So,
and I'm pretty green. I'm pretty green on Instagram.
No,
anyway,
you got it.
But it was awesome.
You're actually impressive on Instagram.
Well, I have daughters that help.
Yeah. So. For the audience that maybe doesn't know who you are, maybe introduce yourself in your own words.
Yeah. So Redgie Probst, I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Quanta Services. 46 years old. I live in Utah, and just recently bought a place in Texas. So we're going to kind of try to do the half here, half there, and have a wife, Robin, and 4 amazing kids.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I noticed that you have a lot of drive, a lot of work ethic. If we went way back to the beginning, what would you say that I needed to know at your core kind of made you who you are today?
That's a great question. I think early on I had very hardworking parents, and so that's all we really knew was just to work hard, right? Pretty humble beginnings. I would say we never went without, but certainly, my parents were ranchers, and eventually my mom was a school teacher, and then when I was in my teens, my dad left our family, and so it kind of instilled, I kind of had to step up, if you will, a little bit, and kind of be the father figure, if you will, and provide. And so I wouldn't say I didn't have a choice, because we all have choices.
Sure. But
I love to work. I truly do. And I probably work too much, that balance. But I would just say, the hard work, I don't know if you can teach it. I think it's either you got it or you don't. And so it just come natural for me. And I kind of started with nothing, zero, right? And so I always had this mentality while growing businesses. Well, if it fails, I'll just start again. And so I never had a real fear of failure. And so it was pretty easy for me to take some big risks. It was easy for me to kind of stretch my neck out and kind of lay it all on the line. But it just kind of come natural for me.
What do you think it was like? You say we all have decisions to make. Do you remember that point where you had a decision to make? Because you could have chose the other way. You could have chose a different direction. You could have chose not to work. You could have chose to be lazy. You could have chose any other path.
Yeah.
You could have turned to anything.
Yeah.
Which a lot of people do. What was that you think turned you that way?
Man, I think, I was thinking about this morning, actually. I think through our life, we do things, certain things drive us. And I think, when you're in your teens, it's all about yourself, right? You get pretty selfish. Mine obviously was a little bit different. I was maybe more concerned about my mother or my family. And then when you get married, you are driven to provide for your wife and things like that. And then obviously when you get kids, you're driven for them. But I would say, the choice is I always wanted to prove to myself that I could be somebody, right? And you probably know I went to line school, was a lineman, come up through the tools, but never really no formal education outside of high school, right? Other than just line school. And so it was kind of important to me to just show myself and I have others, right? That you don't have to go to a university to be successful. You don't have to go to school to be successful. All you have to do is just work hard. Like just get after it and sheer grit and determination. And really, I tell my kids this all the time, Ryan, 99 of the people out there, out of 100, want to see you fail. That's just human nature. Yeah. They want to see you fail.
Especially when you see some success.
Absolutely.
Have some success.
Yes. And so, I wanted to prove them all wrong. And what's really cool about it is you look at highly successful people, and I'm not saying I'm highly successful, but you look at highly successful people and they love to see other people succeed. And I'm the same way. I mean, I love to see young people either start a business, get into the trade, and go as far as they possibly can go. And I love to help. That's kind of where, when you get a certain age, the ego leaves. It's not really about you anymore, and your cup gets full by seeing others really succeed. So
that's an interesting point, actually. When you start to get higher on the mountain than your peers or the people around you, they kind of want to bring you back down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But you never see somebody that's higher than you on the mountain, pushing you down,
never.
Calling you an idiot. And yeah, man, that's a great point. There's so many people in the world that are looking for purpose and passion, and they want to love something like a cowboy loves ranching. What do you think it is about cowboying and being the cowboy and that, ranch rodeo way of life that keeps people loving it, or why they love it so much?
And I think it's obviously the way of life, right? It's how you're raised. But obviously with Yellowstone and some of the things that's happened, everybody wants to be a cowboy. And I think when you start looking at the true, at the core of a cowboy, right? You see, trustworthy. You see hardworking. You see determination. You see grit. You see all these human qualities, good human qualities, and good character about a human that everybody wants to be, right? Not all cowboys are good.
Sure.
And not all, you don't have to be a cowboy to be good. But I do think it's just that Western lifestyle and what makes, I guess, all the good things that kind of wrap around a cowboy in that Western lifestyle that draw people to that. And for me, that's how I was raised, right? And so at my roots and at my core, there's nothing that brings me more joy than doing cowboy stuff, right?
So it's been a part of your life right from the beginning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Why is it such a good fit for our community, trades, line work in particular?
I think, when I started Probst and Summit, I think, most of our guys come from southern Idaho, Utah, those western states, that western region. And a lot of those kids come off of spud farms in Idaho or, farms and ranches in Utah. And it was either, they kind of had two choices. It was either stay on the farm or go to Northwest Line College and pursue a lineman degree or get into the trades. And so we got a lot of those kids, not maybe because they wanted to be there, but it was maybe their only choice sometimes, right? But they fostered into some of our very best employees and teammates. And so I think that, again, that work ethic is key. We have a lot of guys that we hire from Harvard and Yale and big degrees, right? And they're great people. They're smart. And I'm not taking anything away from that at all. To each their own. And I think we need the variety, right? And the diversity. But I do think there's something with work ethic that I would take work ethic over education all day long. You can have the smartest guy or gal in the world. But if there's not any action behind it, if there's not any work ethic behind it, it's pretty useless, And I think you can make a lot out of somebody that just wants to try and wants to get after it. So.
What else do you think from the place you come from? You come from Utah. What do you think about that place and the place you come from kind of fed into that work ethic? Other than the ranch rodeo way of life?
Yeah, I think just the Western U.S., right? And I'll call it the Intermountain. And I would even include, some states that have a lot of ranching. I think that it is just instilled in people to be industrious and to be hard workers. And a lot of times that's how you're judged, right? It truly. And I think that's, when I think about my own kids, I put a lot of pressure on them to be hardworking, right? I mean, you want to teach your kids how to work hard, for me anyway, because it is so important. And I think I had a lot of pressure on me as a kid growing up. Like, it doesn't matter what you do, you work hard, right? And I think that's something we're losing as parents in this generation. And I think the U.S., the world probably a lot.
How do you teach them that? How do you teach them work ethic? How do you teach them hard work?
Man, I think the easiest way is example. I think that's how you teach everything, is by example. You lead by example, and it's not by words, it's by action. And, I think when they're young, you have to get in it's no different than being the COO. You got to get in the trenches, You can sit from the sidelines and you can sit from the house and tell your kids to go do something, and they're going to do it, but are they doing it because they love it, or are they doing it because dad told them to or the boss told them to? I think they got to do it for the right reasons. And if you're in the trenches with them, and if you're showing them and you're, shoulder to shoulder, it's different. They develop a love of work. Yeah. And it's probably a sickness for me a little bit, unfortunately, because it is, you've heard the saying, a workaholic. I mean, I think most of your successful leaders in anything, be it professional sports, be it business, I would say we're all probably workaholics, and it's trying to find that balance is what's hard. It's not necessarily going to work and doing the work. It's trying to find that balance between, work and family and other things you enjoy. So
I've been thinking about this too, and I think it's like you enjoy it's not necessarily that you're a workaholic, and working hard isn't bad. Like I also don't like the cancel culture around working hard. Like, there seems to be a lot of folks out there like, don't work hard, sit back, chill, relax. You don't have to, it's bad for you if you work so hard, but it's not bad for you if you love the process. If you genuinely love the process of work and love what you do and like putting in effort and work ethic into what you do, I think that's important to look at too, because there's such a big cancel culture in the youth community right now, especially around work and working hard. I just asked the guys yesterday from Milwaukee, Tool had them in here, and I was asking them about culture and how you tackle culture at Milwaukee and this sort of thing. So same sort of question for you, COO of Quanta Services. How do you build culture within a company?
I think culture is built over time, right? And just before I answer that question, just to go back on kind of what you were saying, I think a lot about this generation, right? And and I think about I call it a rat race that we're in sometimes, right? Our generation and our parents' generation, we chase and chase and chase, And I look at this kind of what you're saying with this generation that we have right now, and you hear people say all the time, like, this generation's, they're soft. Yeah, maybe they are a little soft, but there's a lot of good kids, a ton of good kids. And, are they soft? I don't know. I think that when you look at really what drives the generation that's with us today, it's quality of life, right? And I think they've watched their parents, they've watched their grandparents in this rat race. Yeah. And I think that there's probably needs to be a hybrid, right? I mean, we get so lost in this race that we forget to enjoy the journey and stop and smell the roses. And so I'm not saying that they're completely right on let's not work. Let's just go live freely. I don't know how they afford to do it anyway, but
Yeah.
but nonetheless, I do think we can learn something from this next generation. That life is pretty short.
Yeah.
Anyway, you got to remind me of your other question.
Just culture, building culture within an organization. We talked a little bit just prior to jumping on air about, some of the ways you build culture. And it seems like, back when you started Probst and Summit, it was smaller amount of crews. I know you probably grew pretty fast as well, but it was almost a little easier. How do you maintain that in a company like Quanta Services?
Yeah, so obviously we're a little unique at Quanta, right? Because of so many operating units, and we're so decentralized. And that's one thing that I think, Duke and myself and the management team really try to do is, number one, maintain culture, but also be aware and cognizant that we're not going to change. We don't want to change culture, right? If you have good culture, and every single operating unit across the U.S., Canada, Australia, every footprint that we're at, everybody has their own culture. And if that culture's good, that culture works. And that's what's hard as we've built this regional structure, as we've grown to this massive company that we are. The hard part is not so much growing that culture, because the culture's there. And, I think about when I started the companies I've started, it's no different than work ethic. You lead by example, right? You create the culture that you want there. And I think it's as a leader, you have to realize when you bring somebody in that's trying to tear that culture down or that does not fit that culture, you got to get them out. They don't fit, and a lot of times they'll never conform to that culture. We've had several operating units, not several. We've had a handful of operating units inside of Quanta since I've been here that we've had to go in and kind of dig down clear to the root and change the culture, and it's hard. I mean, you think about some of these companies. I'm not talking just Quanta companies, but companies in general. It takes, it'll sometimes take 50 years, 100 years to build this culture, and all of a sudden you realize that culture's not a good culture, right? And so it takes a long time to go in and change that culture after they've lived it for so long. So, but I think culture's everything. I think about when we hire somebody. I hire a lot of people, and I very rarely look at a resume, ever. And I can almost instantly tell, are they going to fit, right? Do they have those core beliefs and core values that will work here at Quanta, right? And
what are some of those core values?
I think right at the core is honesty, right? Loyalty, hard work. Are you willing to be a self-motivator, self-starter? Kind of those core. And then I think too, obviously every single operating unit that we have across the U.S. too, and our region, if you will, Canadians, we have a different culture. Yeah. Honestly, I think about. Definitely. I heard Duke talk on the podcast a little bit. He and I have racked our brains on the safety piece of it, right?
Sure.
And what makes Canada so much better when it comes to safety? And I heard Duke say, his kind of thoughts on it. I take it even maybe simpler. Everybody's in coveralls up there. They all look the same. There's no judgment. There's no, this guy's wearing Area FR and I'm wearing this. It's everybody's the same. And so I think you take a lot of judgment out, and there is a brotherhood there that's maybe a little different because of that. I don't know. It's pretty simple, but it is something simple that delineates the two, right?
It's definitely something you could put a little committee together on and kind of look in and dive into it, because somebody who's like I've worked both sides of the border, and you're 100% right. It's drastically different culture both sides.
It is.
Yeah. But seems to work both ways too.
It does. Yeah, it does. And we're getting much better here, I think, as an industry. I used to think, man, if I had a boy, would I want him in the line trade? Some of the shit I seen and went through as an apprentice and a lineman, I don't know if I want my boy there. But today, I think it's as safe as it ever has been, honestly, with the technology and the importance of it and people buying in. I think people are I wouldn't say more coachable now. I just think it's hard to describe, but a lot of that, maybe some of that ego has gone around safety. It's almost like it's I don't even like to call it safety anymore, because it's just part of what a lineman it does, right? It's not forever. It was just safety was over here, and then it was all about production. And I think today, it's kind of like the three-legged stool. You got productivity, you got safety, and you got quality. And if one of those legs fall off, you're nothing, right? And so I think more people realize that.
What's Quanta doing to innovate in safety?
I think a lot. I think with our capacity model, we're trying to penetrate so many different cultures and what works. And what works at one doesn't always work at the other. And so, Duke and Matt Comfer and that team come up with the sticky model, the capacity model. And we were so, you lived through it, and so did I.
Yeah.
It was slip, trips, and falls, and cut fingers, and hangnails, and stuff that really, it happened every day. But was it life altering? Was it gonna kill you? Probably not. Yeah. And so we were so focused on that, hyper focused. And I'm not saying we as in Quanta, but the industry. And I think when we started thinking about, okay, what do we really need to focus on? Well, we had a lot of fatalities at Quanta, and I remember on my first one here, and it rocked me to my core.
It's a big deal.
Yeah. And I never want to have to deal with that again. And so when you start thinking about, okay, what can we do as a company to get rid of the deaths and fatalities and life alterings events, that's what we need to focus on. And so I do think it's so simple. The capacity model is so simple. That's why it resonates with linemen. And what we're facing now is we just continue to have to keep it simple.
Sure.
I think when we start to add to it, we start to try to expand it, that's where it gets lost again and gets watered down. We have to just make sure that it is all about, how do we fail safely, right? How do we get rid of that harnessed energy or have a safe path for it? And
there's really something to like simplicity. Like you said, keep it simple, stupid. There's a reason that saying exists.
So true.
Yeah. I was talking to David the other day at Lazy Q, and he was mentioning how you're taking the capacity model now and going outside of like the direct, company that's working for Quanta, the direct Quanta company, and you're going to vendors and manufacturers and starting to talk to them about like, how could we package this steel so Absolutely. That, we potentially don't prevent an incident. I think that's really cool that you're taking this model now, and it's not like not necessarily expanding it, but like you're just taking it and introducing it to another industry that maybe isn't thinking this way. They're still thinking about simple cuts. And I think that's a cool way to really affect, globally. Like you're really affecting the world with this kind of model and this kind of innovation. So I think that's cool.
Yeah, it's been fun to watch our customers and clients really, they'll grab it and they'll rebrand it to whatever they want to call it. But it's the same principles, and that's kind of the neat thing about Quanta and our philosophies on it is, we're not just trying to make Quanta safe. We're trying to make the industry safe. Yeah. And why would we? I think too often you see people have a really good idea and they hold it really tight, right? Around safety. It needs to be shared. Like we want everybody to go home at night. We want them to leave
top secret Powerline.
Yeah,
right?
It's like we want them to leave work better than they came, right? Yeah. Both mentally and physically. So,
especially like in the trades where most of the trades are very transient, and especially line work is completely transient. Why wouldn't you like teach somebody else? The chances of them coming around and working for a Quanta company and then leaving and influencing others, and then they come work
Absolutely.
For it. Like, it's just
perpetuates.
Makes sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What does a good leader look like to you?
Man, I think a good leader is somebody that shows up, somebody that obviously works hard. I've obviously I've kind of been a leader my whole career, I feel, and I think my leadership has changed some, right? And every single person, when you look at a company of the size of Quanta, 57,000 employees, you have to have some emotional intelligence, right? Because you may need to chew somebody's ass and be really hard on them, while the next guy or person, you may just need to pull them aside, put your arm around them, and it's all positive reinforcement, right? And so I think to be a really effective leader, you have to have a pile of emotional intelligence and be able to read people really well. But I also think leading by example, right? I mean, I would never ask anybody at Quanta Services to do something that I wasn't willing to do myself. And I think, you don't always have to be a lineman to lead lineman. You don't have to be an engineer to lead engineer. And we see it all the time. Some of our best leaders aren't necessarily leading a group of people that they come up through the tools or come up through the ranks, if you will. So I think just that emotional intelligence is big. And then, obviously trust. I think about trust a lot, and it's what sets great companies apart from good companies. I think it's what sets great athletes apart and great athletic teams apart from good athletic teams, is that trust. And it is hard. As humans, we have a hard time trusting each other sometimes. I was thinking about this, we put so much trust in doctors, right? We go to a doctor and he tells us exactly, we know nothing about, the human body, if you will, or very little. And they'll tell you exactly what they're going to do to you. And we trust that they know, right?
Yeah.
But we have such a hard time trusting somebody that we work with every day, right? That we know. And it's something you have to work on, truly.
I love that you brought this up. And it just go back to the Canadian thing. And I don't want to say, I'm not saying there's not trust, within the community, the line community in America. There definitely is a lot of it. But it's something I remember growing up with, I got your back, you got my back. In the bucket, as bucket partners, you'd constantly be talking. And that's something that was driven into me by every lineman I worked with, especially my foreman. Was like, you let me know if that phase is over my shoulder. You let me know if the phase behind me is dropping. He's like, you're watching me and everything I'm doing if I'm working. And then I got you the same way the other way, right? And there was this dialogue and communication, and there was zero ego in that space.
Yeah, absolutely. And
I have noticed, and again, it's not in every sector down here, but there's a little bit of that, don't tell me, I know it's freaking there, shut up. Don't and I'm wondering if maybe some of that is lost there, and maybe that we could do better,
I think, I talked about it a little bit the other day when we had our Quanta Elite event. When I was going through my apprenticeship and for most of my years in the tools, we didn't have phones. I mean, we had a flip phone, right? But you would get 3 people in a pickup truck, or 4 sometimes, and you talked. I mean, you knew everything about your bucket buddy. You knew, probably too much, right?
Way too much.
Guaranteed. But you did. You knew exactly who their kids were and if they had kids, but certainly what they were doing on the weekend and what they did last weekend. And you look today, they get in the truck and the first thing they do is they get on their phones, and it's right here. And I don't think I think we lose some trust there, right? Because we don't have that human connection. Yeah, they're together every single day, but they really don't ever build that relationship. And I think that's, to your point, when you're buddies with somebody and you love them, you watch out for them. And I think, not to sound corny, but it probably is love, right? You don't develop a love for those people you work with, and without love, it's pretty tough to trust, right? And so I think we have to look at that and say, okay, well, how can we teach these kids to? I mean, you look at kids today, it's like they have a hard time carrying on a conversation, a lot of them, because they do it through here, and it's safe, right? They don't have to put themselves out there and be vulnerable. So it's an issue we're not just facing the line trade. It's everywhere.
Yeah, it's everywhere. Yeah, but 8 seconds, exactly what Mike was saying yesterday from Milwaukee. We were talking a little bit about this sort of thing, and he's in sales primarily, and he said the first thing I look at a person, and teach them is look somebody in the eye and shake their hand.
Yep.
And it seems to be lost on them. They're looking at the ground, they're kicking stones, they're so afraid to look at the guy in front of them, look him in the eyes, shake his hand, and then carry on a conversation.
Absolutely.
That's major. I think we could do better out there, guys.
Yeah, no doubt.
do better at communicating, do better at like just trusting that guy that you're with. Remove that chip, remove that ego.
Absolutely.
And allow them to watch your back.
Yep.
You know, explain more about the Quanta Elite program. I was there, but you know, for everyone listening, explain a little bit more what's going on with Quanta Elite.
Yeah. So we had just to give a little context to it.
Sure.
So typically every year we bring all our presidents in to Vegas, 400 or 500 people, presidents and kind of your executive team from our operating units, and we usually have a theme. And I believe last year was Ride for the Brand, trying to bring everybody together, like with all the different operating units. You know, sometimes they get focused on the Alltechs and the Valords and the PARs and Probsts, and so we're trying to get kind of everybody ride for the Q, the Quanta brand. So anyway, we had a lot of Duke and I in a lot of our presentations. We was using a lot of the 4.6s stuff, and there was a ton of good videos, and you know, Duke and I were flying somewhere, I don't remember, but he says, man, it means something to work for the 4.6s. I'm like, yeah, it really does. I mean, those guys wear it proudly on their shirt, and it means something. Everybody wants to go there, I assume, you know, from the cowboy, the working cowboy community. And he said, wouldn't it be cool if it was that cool to work at Quanta, right? If it meant that much. And so that's kind of where the dream started. And he and I have probably worked on it for 2 years, and then obviously build a team to put it together. And what we really try to do is, you know, when you think about a lineman or a foreman at any company or utility, it's lineages, right? When you think about, just look at you, right? I mean, you're second generation or maybe third, I don't know, but your dad was a lineman. And so you kind of just, I think that's what built the industry a lot of times. Was there was a lot of nepotism, right? There was a lot of sons and daughters and cousins that got into the trade. And what we were trying to do is say, okay, we want to identify those lineages, and we want to, you know, nobody wants to get rid of their lead lineman. As a foreman, that lead lineman makes you successful. Sure. You can do a lot with a really good lead lineman, and they suppress those lead linemen to where those lead linemen or the best lineman on the job never gets promoted, right, to a foreman or GF or supervisor or CEO of Quanta, if you will. And so I think what we're trying to do with this Quanta Elite program is really recognize these foremen, because at the core of Quanta, be it in the gas business, be it in the Powerline business, telecom, it's those frontline foremen that is the heartbeat. It is. They are making the money every single day. It's safety starts there. I mean, top to bottom, that is our core. And so really it was just about, number one, you know, trying to incentivize these foremen to make more foremen, I think is kind of number one. And number two is just really to show these guys that, look, you're valued here, right? In a company of, I was telling a couple of them last night after the event, or 2 nights ago after the event, you know, you think about 57,000 employees, and we chose 50. It's like, I haven't done the math, but I'm sure it's like 0.001 or something, you know?
Yeah.
They should be proud, right?
Totally.
Very proud. And, but it was an awesome event. And what we're going to try to do, Ryan, is just every year, they're nominated from their operating unit presidents or supervisors in their geographical area, and we're going to try to bring them in. And with that, obviously, we incentivize. We want to get, you know, you think about just a lineman, myself included. I mean, how much education did you get on investing? How much did you get on zero? Yeah. And so what we want to try to do is make these guys better. You know, you look at so many linemen, young linemen, they get out of line school. They go through their apprentice. The first thing they do is buy a brand new pickup. Then they buy a camp trailer. Then they buy a bass boat. Then they buy snowmobiles. And pretty soon they're living paycheck to paycheck, right? And so I think if we can try to educate these guys to where, and again, it's all about making these guys better, right? And so if you can set them up and teach them some skills on how to invest wisely, how to manage their money, they're happier. They're happier at home.
Absolutely.
They're happier on the job. And they become better employees, and it's not just about becoming better employees, but we're making them better, and they're teaching as well. So that's kind of that was pretty broad, but overarching, that's what we're going to try to do is bring them in once or twice a year, give them some classes on just really bettering themselves and just recognizing, saying thank you, because
that's the biggest thing. Like, I was just gonna share a story, and what came out of it was the recognition portion. I worked directly with a couple of those guys from Alltech, and so I asked him when he came down after, we kind of like left the auditorium and came out, and I asked him, kind of what he thought of the event. Super impressed by it. The first thing he said was like, it's just really nice to be recognized for everything we're doing. He's like, I said, well, how's it going? Did you have good travels down here? He's like, so this is some confirmation that you picked the right guys. He just came off of a windstorm call, worked 4 16-hour shifts straight, barely made the ferry to make the airplane, and was surviving on 3 hours of sleep here. The reason he barely made the airplane was he hung out with the guys and made sure they're working a service call, get the transformer hung, the service connected to the house, close the can. When that point was done, it was coveys off in the truck. He made that ferry by 10 minutes, got to the airplane, got down here.
Wow.
Surviving on 3 hours of sleep. But that's what it is. Like, that's why cool. He's there, right? And I know there's lots of those guys out there.
Yeah, there is.
And there's probably more than 50.
More.
A ton more than 50. But super impressed by that. And that's what we're talking about.
Absolutely.
Like that's a leader. But you're 100% right with, I had this conversation the other day as well on the podcast, which I love this convo about building up the people underneath of you. And you're 100% right by, the people around you make you who you are. And that's part of like being a good leader, is like you kind of surround yourself with those people. Yep. You know how to pinpoint them. And another part of being a good leader is you identify what they're good at and you put them in that job. Because if they're doing that job and they like doing that job and they're good at it, it's going to make you good.
Absolutely.
And you find enough of those people to do all those jobs and you facilitate that, all of a sudden you're doing good, and you don't want to lose that. Because now you're rocking and you're cooking and everyone's happy. But a big part of that is in the trades, not just in the trades, but in business as well, I'm sure, is building and letting them go. Elevating them.
Absolutely.
I appreciate what you've done. Recommended you for the next medal or whatever, and let them go and try to bring the next one in. But there's a lot of that hoarding.
There is
out there.
There's a lot. Yep.
And that's a big deal. So it's a good program. I'm excited to see it.
Yeah, I am too.
Move forward.
I am too. I think it'll be great, and I'm really looking forward to growing it. And you bring up a good point. Back to the question, what makes a good leader? I think it's really recognized. It's being selfless. I think that probably more than anything, as I've thought about it a lot. But you think about the team around you. I certainly didn't get where I'm at today by myself. I mean, I was never driving the ship by myself. Yeah. I always had Carl, right? I mean, he was right-hand man. I had my little brother that was helping me build businesses. And then as I've moved up and kind of on, obviously having great mentors, like Duke and a lot of other good leaders within Quanta and in the trade, right? I mean, I think about guys I used to work with in the tools, right? I mean, they all made me who I am today.
For sure.
So.
Why is craft labor important?
I think craft labor is, to me, it's near and dear, right? Because it's look where it got me, right? I'm kind of a walking proof that anything is possible. I mean, if you'd asked me 20 years ago, if you'd asked me 10 years ago, are you in this role? I'd be like, are you crazy? I'm just a freaking ranch kid that was a lineman that started his own company from Utah. But I think it's important, not only if you look at what's coming, right? You look at what's coming, not just within the U.S. and North America, but the entire world. I think craft is more important now than ever. I really do. And I think, especially with artificial intelligence, AI, I think you're going to see a flop, right? I think you're going to see that we're already seeing some linemen out there, in California and some of these states. They're making more than doctors. They're making more than lawyers. They don't have a lot of student debt. They don't have, the residency, anything like that. And they're making money like that.
Say that louder for the people in the back.
Yeah. It's true.
Yeah.
It truly is. And I think it's going to get better and better and better. And when I say better, there's going to be so many more opportunities for tradesmen, and it's not just linemen, it's tradesmen in general. But when you talk about power linemen in specific, you think about how much, we were listening to Elon Musk at EEI. He said that he anticipates the growth in the U.S. As far as load to 3 times. Well, we can't. Our grid today can't handle the load. I mean, that's why we have brownouts, right? So you think trying to put 3x on already a deteriorating system, every line in America has to be rebuilt.
Even if you do one little hiccup, and it all falls apart.
So I just think the opportunity for young people today to get into the trade is better than ever, and quite frankly, I think you're going to make as much, if not more, money. And it's not all about money either. I mean, the line trade's hard, right? It is. I was kind of off topic, but I was at Alabama Power. We walked into a classroom. We were visiting their training facility, walked into a classroom, and they had stopped the classroom, and they had a bunch of just young guys, early 20s, fresh apprentices. And we asked the instructor what they were talking about, what they were teaching. He says, man, we're just talking about life. And he says, what we don't teach these guys very well is they're gone a lot. They're gone sometimes 2-3 weeks, sometimes 5 days. It doesn't matter, but we're trying to teach these guys that when they come home, they can't just plot their ass on the couch. Like, they got to be a dad, they got to be a husband, and when you look at the divorce rate across linemen, when you look at trying to keep a family together, it's hard. It is hard, and I think that's something that I've talked to NLC, I've talked to our Lazy Q. It's something we need to put into our curriculum, is really just being honest to these young people about how hard that is. Because I've lived it, you've lived it. It is extremely tough to.
It's one of the most frequently asked. Like I had this discussion with Madison, with David Ball from Lazy Q. It's one of the most frequently asked questions is about the road, about travel. How much travel is it? I got to travel a lot. So if I go work here, do I have to leave? Do I have to travel? And the answer is yes.
It is. It's construction.
It's baked into this. And unfortunately, that's just the way it is. So it's like you said, it'd be great to introduce some tools
Absolutely.
that they can use to manage that.
Yep.
I don't know if you have, this was one of my questions, the industry is notoriously hard on families. You've managed to keep a pretty good family together from what I know of you and what I've seen. Do you have any advice for these kids on how to do that? Any tools come to mind?
Yeah, marry smart. Yeah. I mean, honestly, I truly believe it. Behind every successful man or lady is somebody in the back, right? And I think that's the way with anything. If you got I watch a lot of people try to follow their dreams. If they don't have somebody behind them, pushing them and encouraging them, it is extremely hard, very hard. And I was just lucky enough to obviously have such a great support team. But I think just being aware of it, right, and being aware how hard that is on them at home. I come home and mine kind of says, "Hey, we got this. Like, you just come home and screw it up and then leave again," But in all seriousness, it takes work. It does. It takes work. And I've made so many mistakes in my life and in my marriage and as a father that you just, through those mistakes, you get better, right? And you can't dwell on them. You got to just, it's water under the bridge. And I like the saying, the front or the windshield's so much bigger than the rear view mirror. Quit focusing on all your mistakes and all the past and just go forward and try to be better every single day. But it is hard. It is hard. I mean, even today, right? I'm certainly not in the tools anymore, but I'm gone an awful lot. And it's hard. It's hard on me. It's hard on family. It's hard on kids. But I think sometimes you have to take a step back and look at the big picture and think how many lives you're impacting and how much good you're doing. And I think we're extremely hard on ourselves. I know I am. I'm confident you are. And I think linemen in general are hard on themselves, right? And we're our own worst critics. And man, I think sometimes, probably preaching myself here a little bit, but you just gotta stop, right? Stop that noise in your head and just say, you know what, you're doing a good job. So,
I think it's important to do things for you as well. I put some thought into that. Like, it's impossible to show up for your family, for your friends, for your community, for your job, for your work, whatever, if you haven't shown up for yourself.
Absolutely.
First. And that's one of the biggest things I learned about, taking time and going to Nepal.
Yes,
and
it was awesome.
checking off a bucket list item was like, you got to do that for you.
Yep.
And it's not selfish.
It's not selfish, no.
If you're doing it every other day, it is.
Yeah, yeah, I get it.
But it's not selfish to do that, and it's important to do that. It's gonna affect everybody.
I don't have to go now too because I was with you on Instagram.
Yeah, there you go. Took everyone along for the ride.
So it was awesome.
Oh no, you need the full experience.
Cool.
Okay, COO of Quanta Services. What have you got? That's the 30,000 foot view of where are we headed? Where are we headed from your perspective? Kind of ask Duke a similar question, but from the Chief Operating Officer. What's your perspective on it?
As far as Quanta?
Yeah.
Man,
Quanta or the industry even.
I've been in the trade quite a long time, right? And in the business a long time, and I've never had this much visibility out ahead of us. I've never seen this far out ahead of us. And it could be just where I'm at in the position I'm in today, where I have that visibility, but I don't think so. I think everybody has that visibility as far as our runway. But it's exciting times. It really is. And there's so much opportunity, not only for Quanta, but for the people, tradesmen, craftsmen. It is, the markets are so robust, and it's just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. Obviously we're going to have some trials with supply chain. We're going to have some things like that. But, when we rang the bell, the New York Stock Exchange bell, it was, again, kind of a surreal moment for me, if you will. I had to kind of pinch myself. But when you come down the stairs, there's a Sharpie, and you can write a message on the wall, right? So maybe you can read it when you come back. And I just put 40 billion. And so, when I come here, I believe we were doing 5 billion. Today we're over 20. And I truly believe in, I don't know how long, 5 years, we'll be at 40 billion. And you think about what it takes employee-wise to do 20, we're going to double. And we need that many more people. And you think about 50,000 people getting into the trades. And it's not all trades, but it's a lot of people. But, man, I think anything's possible. I'm kind of walking proof of that anything is possible. And if we put the team that we have today, that's what's so cool about being a leader is, you build. They probably are tired of me changing so much. I mean, I love change. I do. And it's finding the right seat for that person on the bus, right? And I'm constantly moving, and we're juggling, and you have to grow. If you're not growing, you're dying, kind of, And so it's constant change within Quanta. I know our employees get tired of the change, but at the same time, if we don't continually change, then we're not at the tip of the spear, and we're not leading. And so we've got such a strong team from top to bottom. I mean, from our regional guys to our OPU presidents to our supervisors. I truly feel like Quanta is the place to work. It means something to work on, and everybody wants to come to Quanta. And maybe that's just my own, I wouldn't call it ego, but just being proud of what this company is that was started by one guy. You think of John Colson's vision. 30 years ago? It's amazing.
Yeah.
And look
so quick, so fast.
What it's grown into. But it is exciting times, and I just think, again, we continue to separate ourselves from the competition. I think no longer are we a contractor. I mean, we're a solutions provider, and a lot of our clients today come to us with very complex, not so much even projects anymore, right? I mean, they are projects, but really programs, and how can we drive costs? And we think so much broader and so much bigger, and I think we're just being viewed differently, and it's a good place to be. It really is. And what we're doing with, some vertical integration with supply chain, it's not about us so much. It's about our client and how can we serve them better. And we have a management team here that believes that, and I think once you talk, it's kind of back to culture, right? It's hard to try to change these cultures that we were selling for years. I was included. We sell widgets. men and equipment, labor and equipment. It's pretty simple.
Yep.
Well, to be different, we have to think differently, right? And we have to act differently. And it probably is a culture, and it's maybe a little bit of a culture change or a shift that we've had to kind of embrace and lean into. Has it been easy? No, but I'll tell you, when you got guys and gals around you that believe in you and believe in what you're doing, you seriously, you can move mountains with the right team. And I'm big on teamwork, right? I mean, I am. I just think that without you're pretty limitless or powerless if by yourself. You really are.
Yeah.
I mean, from marriage to parenting to building businesses or athletics, you've got to have somebody in your corner, right? And
I really like that video and your narration on that video about the horses. Maybe explain that, because it seems like you do build good teams. You build teams. That's what business is, really, right? Yeah. And that's what makes business successful, is building good teams around you. Maybe explain that horse video a little bit. Yeah,
so it's just it's just an analogy with two draft horses and the power of two, right? And I'm sure the audience has all heard, and yourself, the analogy of a single draft horse, a Belgian draft horse, can pull 4,000 pounds by himself. And you think about 4,000 pounds, that's not rolling weight. That's not like a wagon. That's like dead weight, right? Dead weight. So it's a lot. Yeah. And so when you put two together, you think, okay, double that, it's 8,000. Well, it's not. It's 16,000, right? And again, like the world record is 52,000 pounds, but on average, like two Belgians will pull 30,000 pounds. And I've always had teams of horses, and I absolutely love it. It's probably it's probably the most peaceful thing that I do is work draft horses, and it's probably just watching them work together that draws me to them. But when they'll just creep into their collars, you can just see just little movement into their collars, and when they both feel that they've got it, they go together, and they won't do it without each other. And so the trust, I think we can learn a lot from. We learn a lot from animals, right? And
100%.
And I've learned a tremendous amount from a team of horses, right? And I think you'd even take it to a team, or you take it to your marriage. I mean, how hard is it if you're in a partnership and you're not in the yoke together? You're not in the collars together, and one's pulling all the way. It sucks, and you're looking over and saying, what the hell are you doing, right? Or vice versa. So, and I think as I've thought about it a lot here lately, it's trust. I honestly believe that is like the at the core of a good team is trust, and building that trust and being trustworthy. And but it is the draft horses. It resonates with people, right? What's possible. And so, if you can grow Quanta to 20 billion, well, if we got the right people in the harnesses together and we're all pulling together the same direction, what's possible, Yeah,
you can take that right down to the crew level.
Absolutely,
right?
You can.
And you can start at the crew level, and you can work your way up to CEO of Quanta Services or beyond.
Yes.
And if you don't have that we can learn a lot from that. I really like that analogy. I really liked seeing that video, and you could see that in the video. You could see those horses lock into that yoke or whatever it's called and pull together. And that's 100% great analogy for right down to the crew level.
Yep.
If you're all pulling together, I know lots of linemen think they could just go build all the power line in the world by themselves.
Yes, yeah.
But you can't.
It's funny you say that, because, some of your best linemen, you think about some of your best linemen out there, how they grow and mature, and at a certain point in their career, they see that it's not just about them, right? It takes a project manager. It takes somebody, running the project from a paper standpoint. It takes a whole back office. It takes a safety guy. It takes a tool guy. It takes an entire team. It's not just about those guys stringing wire or setting poles. It takes a whole team to make that project successful. And I think is the sooner that a lineman can realize that it's a team, they become better overnight, and I know it was for me, right? You almost kind of disregard some of that makes the rest of the company that you work for or project that you're working on go round. It takes a whole team. And I think about an apprentice and a journeyman, or much like hooking a young horse to an old horse, right? Like, it is a friggin' wreck most of the time. When you hook them up the first time, it's a wreck. I mean, they're freaking, the young ones running off and hitting the collars and bouncing back. And a lot of times, if you can hook them to an old seasoned horse, that horse just stands. He just stands and waits.
Lets him work it out.
Lets it work it out, and then pretty soon, there's not this seesaw, like one's pulling and then he feels that the other one doesn't have the weight, so he pulls back, and then the other one hits it and it's just banging, and pretty soon, it takes some time, but pretty soon they figure it out, and they're just like, oh, this is a hell of a lot easier if we do it together, right? And I think that's the way we are as humans. Like, if we would just stop for a minute and say, okay, like, let's lean on somebody a little bit, or let them lean on me a little bit and make their life easier.
But again, trusting.
It's trust.
That they got you.
They got you.
Too, right? That's such a great, I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Glad you brought that up. I know you're short on time. I've been told. Keep it to
We're
it.
good.
But,
They can wait.
I'll rock through a couple of closing questions, and we'll taper it off from there. If you could go back and give your 18-year-old self a piece of advice, what would it be?
I don't know. I mean, I would say, I guess I was pretty well on my way at 18, right? But if I could go back and give myself some advice at 18, it would be like, just, believe in yourself. I think at 18, it's such a hard, you got a lot of decisions at 18, right? And in fact, I was just telling my daughter, she's just turned 18, and I was almost being compassionate with her a little bit the other day, that it is a tough age. You have a lot of decisions. Careers, colleges, what you're going to do, and I think you just need to. I think a lot of people chase, again, money, right? And money's good. It is good. It's good for all of us. But if you're not happy, what good's the money, right? And so I think you got to find something that really you enjoy. And so I always enjoyed working. I enjoyed the trade. I enjoyed what I was doing. But maybe just, believe in yourself. Keep going. Just keep going. And I would never I'd rather bet on myself than anybody, right? And I think that's something that these young people getting into the trade, bet on yourself. You're never going to find a better bet than yourself. And
have some patience.
Have some patience and be kind to yourself. That's, we kind of talked about it earlier. We're so damn hard on ourselves, and so critical. And, man, I think that's one of the things I think I still battle today, is being kind to yourself, and acknowledging the good you do and the good person you are, and a lot more positives than negatives, right? And it's hard to quiet those voices that tell you all the bad things that you're doing, or you're not being a good dad, you're not being a good husband, you're not being a good boss. It's just noise. It's just those voices in your head that try to bring you down. And so I think my 18-year-old version, it would be just that. It would be, believe in yourself, keep going, be kind to yourself, be kind to others, help more, help others more. I think about when I was in high school, and I was kind of the class clown, C student. I didn't give two shits about being there, and I struggled in school, but I wasn't kind. I wasn't very kind to people. I really wasn't, and I look back now, and man, I wish I would have been kinder to people. I wish I'd have reached out to kind of the lonely. I would have reached out to the kid that was eating by himself, and so I think as you get older, you try to make some wrongs right, and you do try to reach out to those that you see are needing a little boost, or need a arm put around them, or a hug, and that's what kind of defines you as a person, shoot, I don't care about the COO title. At the end of the day, it's what people think about, how I made them feel. And I think that's the way with life, I think it's George Strait's song, he's never seen a hearse with a luggage rack,
Yeah.
I mean, we're not taking any of this stuff with us.
No.
And so what you're leaving behind is a legacy and the memories of how you made people feel and how you helped others and build others up. And I think that's where I find most of my joy is giving back, and I think my grandmother, from a very young age, always told me, the more you give, the more you get. And I used to get in trouble by my brother, who kind of run our books. I'd go to the local fair when we were building a business, and I'd, buy all the kids' fair animals and come back to the office on Monday, and he'd be like, well, how much do you spend? I'd tell him, he'd be like, holy shit, no, we can't afford it, I'm like, be fine. But that's kind of been my philosophy in business too. The more you give, the more you get back. And it's worked. It's worked for me. And so I don't think you can give too much. I really don't.
What's the best piece of advice you ever got from somebody else?
I think just believe in yourself. Yeah. My mom used to tell me that all the time. Just believe in yourself. And yeah, you do. You just, I think too often, especially today, it's hard. It's hard to believe in yourself. You got so many critics, so many people watching you, and you have to learn to kind of quiet that, or try to let it go in one ear and out the other. Everybody's got an opinion. Everybody's going to point fingers at you. It's like there's a poem about the man in the arena. Well, everybody's a critic. Okay, but unless you're standing there and you're in the arena, don't be critical. If you're in the arena, that's saying something in itself, right? You're there. They're not. The rest of the people out there watching you, they're not in the arena. And so I think don't be critical. Just be kind, be good. So
What do you, when it's all said and done and it's over and it's just Redgie Probst's legacy, what do you want to be known for?
Well, it sounds corny, but a hard worker, right? I mean, it's what makes it, it's almost what defines me a little bit, right? Is you outwork them, right? And that's what's got me where I'm at today. I mean, I've been blessed, but it's hard work. Honestly, I can't think of any other thing other than just the tenacity to get after it, take a chance, and work hard. Put everything else aside, which again comes with sacrifice of family, friends, everything. But it is hard work. But as you think a little bit deeper than that, it's being charitable, being generous, being kind, being gentle. I think the more you lead, and it's hard. It's hard to find that balance, because as the tension and the stress, especially where I'm at today, it's hard not to get into a funk of being an asshole sometimes, right? Because you've got so much. But I think being, if you can be a good leader and be gentle, but also firm and fair at the same time, it's a balancing act that I'm still learning, and I think I'll learn till probably the day I die, is how to balance all that. But I think I just want to be remembered as a good guy, somebody that genuinely cared.
Love it. Thanks for hanging out today.
Yeah.
Thanks for spending time. Thanks for doing this.
It's amazing what you've done. I think this is just going to grow into so much.
I'm super excited about it.
Opportunities.
Yeah.
So I'm glad we brought you on, and thanks for doing this. So.
Absolutely, dude. All right, guys, you know what to do. You know what I'm going to ask you. So please, if you could do this thing for me, is just make sure you're subscribed on any platform that you're listening to this on, whether it's watching it on YouTube or listening to the audio form. I've been into the back end of these platforms, and it's amazing how many of you listen out there but have yet to subscribe. So if you could subscribe or follow, I'd much appreciate it. It really helps us push this thing out, gets better guests on, all that kind of good stuff. So appreciate you guys. We'll see you in the next one. Peace.